Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Horizon's Dream, watching the stars stream past through the viewing window. 5,000 colonists slept in the passenger sections below, dreaming of their new home on New Terra. It was humanity's first colony beyond the solar system, a milestone that would have seemed impossible just 10 years ago. Jake had been a cargo hauler for most of his career, moving freight between Earth and Mars. When the Galactic Council made first contact 3 years ago, everything changed. They offered humanity membership, technology, and access to thousands of inhabited worlds. Jake jumped at the chance to captain a colony ship. He wanted to be part of history, part of humanity's expansion into the stars. The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. Navigation Officer Danny Price monitored their flight path. Communications Officer Helen Ward listened to the peaceful chatter of nearby ships. Engineer Chris Baker kept the massive engines running smoothly. They were 6 weeks into an 8-week journey and everyone was excited. Jake smiled as he thought about the colonists below. Families, scientists, farmers, teachers, all of them ready to build something new. The Galactic Council had been welcoming mostly. Some species seemed friendly. Others seemed distant, almost cold. But Jake figured that was normal when dealing with aliens. Different cultures, different ways of thinking. The alarm shattered the peaceful moment. Helen's hands flew across her console. Captain, we have multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace. They're surrounding us. Jake's stomach dropped. Identification? Vrekath signatures, Helen said, her voice tight with fear. The Vrekath were one of the Council species, reptilian warriors with a reputation for aggression. They had voted against humanity's admission to the Council but were overruled. During the initial meetings, their ambassador had called humans soft prey species that would learn their place soon enough. Hail them, Jake ordered. Open a channel. The view screen flickered to life, showing a Vrekath commander. The alien's scales were dark green and its eyes were cold yellow slits. Sharp teeth filled its mouth when it spoke. Human vessel, you have entered our hunting grounds. Prepare to be boarded. Jake kept his voice calm. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Horizon's Dream. We're on an approved flight path to New Terra. The Galactic Council authorized this route. There must be some mistake. The Vrekath commander laughed, a harsh sound that made Jake's skin crawl. There is no mistake, human. Your species needs to learn a lesson. You are weak. You are prey. We will teach you your place in the galaxy. We're carrying 5,000 civilians, Jake said, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair. Families, children. This is a colony ship, not a military vessel. Even better, the Vrekath said. Your weakness will be broadcast across the Council. Every species will see what happens to those who forget their place. The channel cut off. Jake immediately turned to Helen. Send a distress signal. Everything we have. Every frequency. Get it out now. Helen's fingers moved fast. Transmitting on all channels, Captain. Jake hit the ship-wide communication system. All hands, this is the captain. We are under attack. This is not a drill. Security teams, arm yourselves and prepare to repel boarders. All civilians get to the safe rooms immediately. Follow emergency procedures. The Vrekath ships opened fire. Bright blue energy beams slammed into the Horizon's Dream's shields. The civilian ship wasn't built for combat. The shields held for a few minutes, then collapsed. Explosions rocked the hull as weapons fire tore through the outer sections. They're disabling our engines, Chris shouted from the engineering station. We can't run. Jake knew they couldn't fight either. The Horizon's Dream had no weapons, no armor. It was designed to carry people safely across space, not to fight wars. He watched helplessly as Vrekath boarding craft attached to the hull like parasites. The sounds of fighting echoed through the ship. Jake could hear screams over the communication system. The Vrekath warriors were cutting through the crew with brutal efficiency. Security teams with basic weapons couldn't stop aliens bred for war. Danny looked at Jake with terror in his eyes. What do we do, Captain? Jake pulled out his sidearm, a simple pistol that felt useless against what was coming. We protect as many people as we can. The bridge doors exploded inward. Vrekath warriors poured through, their weapons raised. Jake managed to fire twice before a blast of energy hit him in the chest. He fell to the deck, pain spreading through his body. His last thought was of his wife back on Earth, and how he'd promised to send for her once the colony was established. The Vrekath moved through the ship systematically. They herded crew members and colonists into the main cargo bay. Families clung to each other. Children cried. The Reketh commander from the view screen walked among them, examining the humans like livestock. "This is what weakness looks like," the commander said, speaking into a recorder that broadcast the message across council channels. "Humans believe they deserve a place among the stars. But look at them. They cannot defend themselves. They cry and beg like animals." The commander raised his weapon and fired into the crowd. People screamed and tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The Vreketh warriors laughed as they opened fire. The massacre lasted for hours. They took their time, making sure to record everything. Only 300 colonists survived by hiding in sealed cargo sections. The Vreketh eventually grew bored and left, their ships jumping back into hyperspace. Behind them, the Horizon's Dream drifted in space, silent except for the sobbing of the survivors. The distress signal Jake's crew sent reached Earth 2 days later. Admiral Kate Sullivan was in Fleet Command when the message arrived. She was a career officer, 40 years in the service, and had seen plenty of combat against pirates and raiders in the early solar system. But she'd never seen anything like the footage that accompanied the distress signal. The Vreketh had broadcast their attack. They wanted everyone to see. Kate watched in horror as the aliens executed unarmed civilians. She watched families die together. She watched children run from the weapons fire. The footage showed the Vreketh warriors laughing, celebrating their kill. Kate's hands shook as she forwarded the message to President Henry Carter. Within an hour, she was standing in the White House Situation Room with the President, his cabinet, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The room was completely silent as they watched the footage. President Carter was a man who chose his words carefully. He'd been a diplomat before entering politics. He'd spent his entire career working for peace and cooperation. But as he watched the massacre, something changed in his eyes. "How many?" Carter asked quietly. 4,700 confirmed dead, Kate said. 300 survivors. Captain Morrison and his entire bridge crew were killed in the initial boarding. And the Galactic Council's response? Kate pulled up the message on the screen. They sent an official statement expressing regret. They're calling it an unfortunate incident. They suggest we pay tribute to the Vreketh to prevent future attacks. The room erupted. Cabinet members shouted over each other. The Secretary of Defense demanded immediate military action. The Secretary of State warned about starting a war with an entire galactic civilization. President Carter raised his hand, and everyone fell silent. He stood slowly and walked to the window, looking out at the White House lawn. When he spoke, his voice was calm but filled with something cold and absolute. "Gentlemen, ladies, we spent 3 years being careful with the Galactic Council. We wanted to be good neighbors. We wanted to show we were civilized, peaceful, ready to join the community of intelligent species." He turned back to face them. "We were wrong. The galaxy doesn't respect civilization. It respects strength." He looked directly at Kate. "Admiral Sullivan, you've been planning for this possibility since first contact. You told me we needed to be ready in case the aliens weren't friendly. I didn't want to believe you. I wanted to believe in a peaceful universe." He gestured to the frozen image on the screen, showing a Vreketh warrior standing over human bodies. "I was a fool." Kate nodded slowly. "Sir, if you're authorizing what I think you're authorizing..." "I am," Carter said. "Show them what happens when you slaughter humans. Show them why we survived every predator on Earth. Show them why we're the apex species on our world." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "No mercy, Admiral." "None at all," Kate saluted. "Mr. President, they're going to regret the day they learned humanity existed." Carter looked at each person in the room. "We're going to war. Not for conquest. Not for territory. For one simple reason. To make absolutely certain that no alien species ever looks at a human being and sees prey." He turned back to the screen. "They wanted to teach us our place in the galaxy. Fine, we'll teach them about humanity. And when we're done, the Galactic Council will never underestimate Earth again." The meeting ended. Kate walked out of the White House with authorization for Operation Reckoning. She pulled out her phone and made a call to Fleet Command. "This is Admiral Sullivan. Authorization code Alpha 77 Omega. Activate blackout protocol." "I repeat, activate blackout protocol." "We're going to war." Around the world, military bases received the signal. Shipyards that had been quietly building warships under the guise of civilian construction. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the operations center of Fleet Command, watching dozens of screens display information from around Earth. Every major nation had responded to the blackout protocol. 3 years of secret preparation was finally being put into action. The Galactic Council expected humanity to file diplomatic protests. They expected humans to beg for justice through official channels. They expected Earth to accept the Rekath attack as a lesson and pay tribute like other weak species had done before. The Council had no idea what was actually coming. Kate had spent her entire career preparing for combat. When the Galactic Council made first contact, she was one of the few voices arguing for caution. While politicians celebrated humanity's acceptance into galactic civilization, Kate asked a simple question: what if they're not friendly? That question led to Blackout Protocol. For 3 years, every major spacefaring nation on Earth contributed to a secret military buildup. They disguised warship construction as civilian projects, mining vessels that could be converted to warships, cargo haulers with hidden weapon mounts, research stations that doubled as military bases. All hidden in plain sight, Lieutenant Commander Ben Hayes entered the operations center carrying a tablet filled with data. Ben was 32 years old and brilliant at tactical analysis. He'd graduated top of his class at the Naval Academy and spent 5 years studying alien technologies. His specialty was finding weaknesses in enemy systems, but today Ben wasn't thinking about tactics. His sister had been on the Horizon's dream. Jenny Hayes was a teacher, eager to educate children on humanity's first colony. She died in the Cargo Bay massacre. Ben had watched the footage 17 times, memorizing every detail, burning the image into his mind. "Admiral," Ben said, his voice carefully controlled, "I have the tactical analysis you requested." Kate turned from the screens. She'd known Ben since he was a cadet. She'd watched him grow into one of the finest officers in the fleet. She'd also read the casualty list and knew what this mission meant to him. "Report," she said quietly. Ben activated a holographic display showing Rekath territory. The Rekath controlled 12 star systems. They have 53 military installations, 18 shipyards, and a home defense fleet of approximately 200 warships. He zoomed in on specific targets. Their technology is advanced, but they rely heavily on energy shields and directed energy weapons. "Weaknesses?" Kate asked. "Their shields are designed to deflect energy attacks. They're excellent against lasers and plasma weapons." Ben's expression hardened, "But they've never fought humans. They don't know about our kinetic weapons doctrine." Kate nodded. "When humanity started developing space combat technology, they took a different approach than the aliens. Council species used energy weapons because they were efficient and powerful. Humans used railguns, missiles, and old-fashioned kinetic projectiles. Humanity's weapons were brutal, unsophisticated by galactic standards, and devastating against shields designed to stop energy attacks. Their stations are concentrated in 3 primary systems," Ben continued. "Grimlock, Tarvis, and their homeworld of Rekath Prime. If we hit them fast and hard, we can cripple their military before they organize a defense." Kate studied the display. "Casualties?" Ben's jaw tightened. "High. Maybe 30% of our forces. These won't be easy battles, Admiral. But if we commit fully, if we don't hold back, we can break them." "Good," Kate said. "Prepare the fleet. We launch in 3 weeks." Across Earth, the military machine came to life. In orbit around the moon, shipyards that supposedly built cargo vessels revealed their true purpose. The ships were warships, built with human engineering philosophy, redundant systems, heavy armor, and overwhelming firepower. Dr. Lisa Chen watched the mobilization from her laboratory at the University of California. Lisa was 45 years old and Earth's leading expert on alien biology. She dedicated her career to peaceful scientific research, studying the fascinating diversity of life in the galaxy. She'd never imagined her work would be used for war. A military transport arrived at her lab with orders from Fleet Command. Lisa was being drafted as a civilian consultant. They needed her expertise on Rekath physiology. She wanted to refuse. She'd become a scientist to build bridges between species, not to help kill them. Then they showed her the footage from the Horizon's dream. Lisa watched in horror as Rekath warriors murdered families. She watched children die. When the footage ended, she looked at the military officer who delivered her orders. "What do you need to know?" she asked. Lisa spent 2 weeks briefing military commanders on everything humanity knew about the Rekath. Their biology, their psychology, their culture. She explained how their respiratory system worked, which atmospheric compounds were toxic to them, and how their scales provided natural armor, but left vulnerable points around joints and eyes. She hated every moment of it. But she kept seeing those children running from the weapons fire. She kept hearing their screams. So she gave the military everything they asked for. Commander Ryan Foster supervised the final preparations aboard the EFS Retribution. Ryan was a career officer, 15 years in service with a reputation for unorthodox tactics. He'd been teaching at the Naval War College when the Horizon's Dream was attacked. Now he commanded the lead ship in humanity's first interstellar war. The Retribution was a conversion from a deep space mining ship. It was ugly, bulky, and built like a fortress. The hull was 3 times thicker than standard military specifications. The engines were oversized and overpowered. The weapon systems were a mix of railguns, missile batteries, and experimental directed energy weapons. Ryan walked through the ship, inspecting every section. The crew was ready. They were volunteers, all of them. Many had lost family in the attack. They wanted revenge, and Ryan was going to give it to them. Lieutenant Amy Brooks worked at her communications station running final system checks. Amy was 26 and had joined the Navy to see the stars. She'd imagined peaceful exploration and first contact ceremonies. Instead, she was preparing for war. "Commander," Amy said as Ryan approached, "all communication systems are operational. We'll be able to monitor Vrakath channels during the assault." Ryan nodded. "Good, I want to hear everything they say. Every distress call, every plea for help, every scream." His expression was cold, just like they broadcast our people's deaths. Amy swallowed hard. She understood the anger, felt it herself, but she worried about what they were becoming. "Sir, do you think we're doing the right thing?" Ryan looked at her for a long moment. "The Vrakath murdered 5,000 civilians to prove humans were weak. They laughed while they did it. They broadcast it to the galaxy as entertainment." He turned back to the viewport, looking out at Earth hanging in the distance. "We're going to prove we're not weak. We're going to prove that humanity doesn't forget. And we're going to make sure no alien species ever thinks about attacking us again." The fleet assembled in high orbit. 50 warships, more than half of humanity's entire military space force. Destroyers, frigates, and heavy cruisers. Every ship was crewed by volunteers. Every ship carried enough firepower to level a city. Admiral Sullivan addressed the fleet from Fleet Command. Her image appeared on every screen in every ship, reaching thousands of military personnel preparing for battle. 3 weeks ago, the Vrakath attacked the Horizon's Dream. They murdered 4,700 of our people, men, women, and children. They did it to send a message to show the galaxy that humans were weak prey that could be hunted for sport. Kate's voice was steady but filled with rage. "Today we're going to send a different message." She paused, letting her words sink in. "The Vrakath think they understand warfare. They don't. They've never fought a species like us. They evolved on a world with one apex predator. We evolved on a death world where everything wanted to kill us and we won anyway. We climbed to the top of our food chain by being smarter, meaner, and more ruthless than anything else on Earth." Kate's expression hardened. "We're going to show them what human warfare looks like. We're going to hit them so hard they forget their own names. We're going to destroy their military, occupy their territory, and make it absolutely clear that attacking humanity was the worst mistake they ever made." The fleet crews cheered. On Earth, billions watched the broadcast. Some celebrated. Others worried about what humanity was becoming. But everyone understood that something fundamental had changed. Humanity was no longer the newcomer hoping for acceptance. They were predators, and the galaxy was about to learn what that meant. President Carter made a public address from the Oval Office. His speech was broadcast across Earth and sent to every Galactic Council member species. "My fellow humans," Carter began. 3 weeks ago, we lost 4,700 of our brothers and sisters. They were murdered by the Vrakath, a species that viewed humanity as weak prey. The Galactic Council did nothing. They expressed regret and suggested we pay tribute. Carter's voice grew stronger. "Humanity will not pay tribute. Humanity will not accept being prey. Our ancestors survived ice ages, plagues, and wars. They conquered every challenge Earth threw at them. We carry that same strength, that same will to survive." He looked directly into the camera. "To the Galactic Council, you wanted—" The human fleet emerged from hyperspace like ghosts materializing from nothing. Grimlock Station's sensors detected them immediately, but the Vrakath personnel didn't react with concern. They saw 50 primitive human ships and laughed. Their station alone had enough firepower to destroy half that number. Commander Ryan Foster stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the tactical display. Grimlock Station was massive, a wheel of metal and weapons spinning slowly in the void. It represented everything wrong with the Galactic Council's view of humanity. The Rikath built it to intimidate weaker species, to remind everyone of their military might. Communications, Ryan said calmly. Are they hailing us? Lieutenant Amy Brooks checked her console. Yes, sir. The station commander is demanding we leave immediately or be destroyed. Ignore it, Ryan said. Weapons target their shield generators. All ships prepare to fire on my mark. The Vrekath station commander sent another message, more aggressive this time. The alien's voice carried arrogance and contempt. Humanity had no chance against Vrekath military technology. This was suicide. The humans should run while they still could. Ryan smiled coldly. Fire. The Retribution's railguns opened up first. Tungsten slugs, each one weighing several tons, accelerated to a fraction of light speed. They crossed the distance to Grimlock Station in seconds. The station's energy shields flickered to life, designed to deflect laser and plasma fire. The slugs punched through like the shields weren't even there. Kinetic energy was physics at its most basic. The shields that could deflect energy weapons had no answer for solid matter, traveling at incredible velocity. The tungsten slugs hit Grimlock Station's outer hull and penetrated deep into the structure. Explosions rippled across the station's surface. The rest of the human fleet opened fire. 50 ships, hundreds of railguns, thousands of missiles. The barrage was overwhelming. Grimlock Station's defenders scrambled to respond, but they'd never faced weapons like this. Their return fire splashed harmlessly against the thick armor of human ships. Lieutenant Commander Ben Hayes watched the battle from the tactical station, calling out targets and coordinating the fleet's fire. Focus on the command center. Take out their ability to coordinate. The Retribution's missiles streaked toward their targets, leaving trails of bright fire across the darkness. They slammed into the station's central hub, where the command center controlled all defensive systems. Secondary explosions bloomed like deadly flowers. Inside Grimlock Station, chaos erupted. Vrekath warriors ran through corridors filling with smoke and fire. They'd trained for battle, but never imagined facing an enemy like this. Human weapons were supposed to be primitive. The Council's intelligence said Earth forces were decades behind galactic technology. The intelligence was wrong. Station Commander Rek tried to rally his forces, but the communication systems were failing. Whole sections of the station had lost power. The shields were down. Weapons batteries fell silent as their control systems were destroyed. In less than 30 minutes, Grimlock Station went from a symbol of Vrekath power to a dying piece of metal. Sir, Amy said, her voice tight. We're receiving multiple distress signals from the station. They're calling for reinforcements and begging for mercy. Ryan's expression didn't change. Ignore them. Continue firing until the station is completely destroyed. Amy hesitated. Sir, some of those calls are from medical bays. There are wounded who can't fight. Ryan turned to look at her. His eyes were cold. Did the Vrekath stop when our people begged? Did they show mercy to the wounded on the Horizon's Dream? To the children? He turned back to the tactical display. They wanted to teach us a lesson about the galaxy. Now they're learning one. Continue firing. The assault continued for another 20 minutes. When it ended, Grimlock Station was a field of debris floating in space. 2,000 Vrekath personnel were dead. Not a single human casualty. The fleet hadn't even taken serious damage. Jump to the next target, Ryan ordered. Don't give them time to prepare. The human fleet vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind the ruins of what had been considered an impregnable fortress. News of the attack spread through Vrekath space within hours. Panic followed. Admiral Kate Sullivan coordinated the campaign from Fleet Command on Earth. She tracked every ship, every battle, every target destroyed. The strategy was simple and brutal. Destroy every Vrekath military installation before they could mount an organized defense. Hit them so fast and so hard they couldn't recover. The fleet jumped to their second target, a shipyard orbiting the fourth planet in the Tarvis system. This facility built Vrekath warships, producing 3 new vessels every month. It was protected by a defensive fleet of 20 ships and orbital weapons platforms. Commander Foster didn't slow down. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace already firing. The Vrekath defenders tried to form a defensive line, but human ships smashed through them like a hammer through glass. The Retribution led the charge, her thick armor absorbing hits that would cripple normal vessels. Captain Greg Palmer commanded a squad of Marines aboard the Retribution. Greg was a veteran of dozens of boarding actions against pirates in the solar system. He was 35 years old, built like a tank, and had no patience for mercy when it came to the Vrekath. "Marines, suit up," Greg ordered as the Retribution closed with the shipyard. "We're going in." Greg's team wore powered armor, experimental suits that turned humans into walking tanks. The armor was heavy, expensive, and gave its wearer the strength to tear through metal with their bare hands. It also made them nearly immune to small arms fire. The Retribution launched boarding craft toward the shipyard. Vrekath defenders tried to shoot them down, but most made it through. Greg's pod slammed into the shipyard's hull, cutting through the metal with plasma torches. His team poured into the station like avenging angels. The Vrekath warriors inside had never seen anything like powered armor. They opened fire with their energy weapons, but the shots bounced off or were absorbed by the armor's shielding. Greg and his team advanced methodically, their own weapons cutting down any Vrekath who tried to resist. "Clear every section," Greg ordered. "Find the command center and secure any intelligence data." His Marines moved through the shipyard with brutal efficiency. Some Vrekath tried to surrender. Greg ignored them, following his orders. No mercy, no prisoners, just complete destruction of enemy forces. They found the shipyard's central computer core and downloaded everything. Ship designs, deployment schedules, communication codes. Then Greg planted demolition charges throughout the facility. His team evacuated back to the Retribution just as the charges detonated. The shipyard tore itself apart from the inside, secondary explosions lighting up space for light years around. "Target destroyed," Greg reported to Commander Foster. Proceeding to next objective. The campaign continued. The human fleet moved through Vrekath space like a force of nature, destroying everything military in their path. Stations, shipyards, defensive platforms, patrol fleets. Nothing survived contact with humanity's war machine. Dr. Lisa Chen monitored the battle reports from Earth, her feelings mixed. She'd helped make this possible by providing biological intelligence on the Vrekath. Part of her felt sick at the destruction. Another part remembered the children dying on the Horizon's Dream and felt the Vrekath deserved everything they were getting. She watched footage from one of the battles, seeing how human tactics overwhelmed alien defenses. The Council species had spent centuries developing sophisticated weapons and defensive systems. Humanity had spent those same centuries perfecting the art of killing. It showed. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from 17 species gathered in the Grand Chamber, watching the reports from Vrekath space with growing alarm. Many had dismissed humanity as primitive newcomers. Now they were seeing what those primitives could do when pushed to war. Ambassador Neil Grant represented Earth at the Council. Neil was a career diplomat, 52 years old, who'd spent his life building bridges between nations and cultures. He'd been thrilled when humanity joined the Galactic Council. Now he stood in the chamber defending actions that horrified him. The Korvax representative, an ancient species that had been part of the Council for thousands of years, spoke first. "Ambassador Grant, humanity's aggression must stop. The Vrekath attack on your colony ship was regrettable, but this response is disproportionate. You're committing genocide." Neil kept his voice calm. "With respect, we're doing exactly what the Vrekath did to us. They attacked civilians. We're attacking military targets. They killed 5,000 people for no reason other than to prove we were weak. We're destroying their ability to threaten anyone ever again. You've killed over 20,000 Vrekath in 3 weeks," another council member said. "How is that justice?" "It's not justice," Neil replied. "It's a message. Every species in this chamber needs to understand something. Humanity will not be prey. We will not be hunted. We will not allow our people to be slaughtered while the Council expresses regret and does nothing." He looked around at the assembled aliens. "You created a galaxy where strength is the only thing that matters. Congratulations. You're about to learn that humans are very, very strong." The human fleet held position in orbit around Vrekath Prime. Below, on the planet's surface, the Vrekath government scrambled to respond. Their military was shattered. 70% of their warships were destroyed. Their stations and shipyards were debris fields. And 50 human warships sat above their homeworld, weapons ready. Commander Ryan Foster waited for their response. The Retribution had taken damage during the assault. Hull breaches in 3 sections, 1 railgun battery offline. 7 crew members dead, 23 wounded. But the ship was still operational, still deadly. Lieutenant Amy Brooks monitored communications from the planet. "Sir, we're receiving multiple transmissions. The Rikath government is, fragmenting. Different factions are broadcasting different messages." "What kind of messages?" Ryan asked. "Some are calling for continued resistance. Others are demanding surrender. There's a lot of chaos down there." Amy paused, listening to her headset. "Sir, we're also getting civilian broadcasts. They're terrified. They think we're going to destroy the planet." Ryan felt a weight in his chest. He'd spent weeks destroying Rekath military forces without hesitation, but looking at that planet, knowing billions of civilians lived there, made it real in a different way. They were people. Not soldiers. Just people who happened to be born Rekath. "Send a message on all frequencies," Ryan said. "Tell them we're not here to kill civilians. We're here to end their ability to wage war against humanity. If their government surrenders unconditionally, no further blood needs to be spilled." The message went out. Hours passed. Ryan used the time to tour the damaged sections of his ship, seeing the cost of victory firsthand. He stopped at the medical bay where wounded crew members were being treated. He knew each person by name, had served with some of them for years. Lieutenant Commander Ben Hayes found him there, standing beside a young engineer who'd lost both legs when a Rekath missile penetrated the armor. The engineer was unconscious, stabilized but critical. "We won," Ben said quietly. "The Rekath military is broken. They can't threaten anyone now." Ryan looked at the wounded scattered throughout the medical bay. "At what cost, Ben? We've killed tens of thousands of them. We've lost hundreds of our own people. Was it worth it?" Ben's expression hardened. "Yes. My sister is dead because the Rekath thought humans were easy prey. Now they know different. Now everyone knows different. And what does that make us?" Ryan asked. "We came out here for revenge, we got it. But I keep thinking about that cargo bay on the Horizon's Dream. About families dying while aliens laughed. Are we any better? We've been killing Rekath and ignoring their pleas for mercy just like they ignored ours." Ben didn't answer for a long moment. Finally, he said, "The difference is we're killing warriors who chose to fight. The Rekath killed civilians who wanted to build a colony. That's the line, Ryan. That's what separates us from them." Ryan wanted to believe that. He needed to believe it. But doubt gnawed at him. Back on Earth, Admiral Kate Sullivan faced similar questions. The campaign had been successful beyond expectations. Human casualties were lower than predicted. Rekath military capabilities were essentially destroyed. But the price was mounting. Dr. Lisa Chen requested a meeting with the Admiral. Kate granted it, curious what the xenobiologist wanted. They met in Kate's office overlooking Fleet Command's Operations Center. Lisa wasted no time. "Admiral, I helped make this campaign possible. I gave you information on Rekath biology, their weaknesses, how to kill them efficiently." She looked exhausted. "I haven't slept properly in weeks. Every time I close my eyes, I see the battle reports. Thousands dead, cities in panic, and I know my knowledge helped cause that." Kate nodded slowly. "Having second thoughts, Doctor?" "Aren't you?" Lisa shot back. "We've killed over 30,000 Rekath. For what, revenge? To prove we're strong? When does it end?" "It ends when they surrender," Kate said firmly. "When they acknowledge that attacking humanity was a mistake they'll never repeat. When every species in the galaxy understands that humans are not to be trifled with. And if they don't surrender, how many more do we kill?" Kate was quiet for a moment. "As many as it takes. I know that sounds harsh, Doctor, but the alternative is showing weakness. If we stop now, if we accept a partial victory, then other species will test us. More humans will die. The only way to prevent future attacks is to make this lesson so painful, so complete, that no one ever wants to repeat it." Lisa stood to leave. "I hope you're right, Admiral. Because if you're wrong, we've turned ourselves into the monsters we're fighting." After Lisa left, Kate sat alone in her office, staring at casualty reports. She'd known going in that war was ugly. She'd fought pirates and raiders, seen people die, but this was different. This was systematic destruction on a massive scale, and she'd ordered it all. Her personal console chimed. A message from President Carter requesting an update. Kate prepared a summary and sent it. Military objectives achieved. Rekath forces neutralized, awaiting surrender. She didn't mention her doubts. Didn't mention the weight of responsibility that kept her awake at night. In the Galactic Council chambers, the emergency session continued. Ambassador Neil Grant had been arguing with council members for days. Some species wanted to intervene militarily to stop human aggression. Others advocated for sanctions. A few remained silent, watching and calculating. The Korvax representative finally spoke again. This ancient species had observed the conflict with growing concern. They were one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the Council, their wisdom respected by all. "We have made a grave error," the Korvax said, their translated voice filling the chamber. "When humanity petitioned for Council membership, we evaluated their technology and found it primitive. We assessed their military capabilities and found them limited. We judged them as another young species requiring guidance." The Korvax's holographic avatar shifted, showing what might have been distress in their alien features. "But we failed to understand the most important factor. Humans evolved on Earth, a world we classify as a Category 9 death world. Their planet tried to kill them with ice ages, predators, diseases, and natural disasters for millions of years. And humans not only survived, they thrived." Other council members shifted uncomfortably. The Korvax continued. "Most species here evolved on Category 3 or 4 worlds, comfortable environments with few existential threats. We developed technology slowly, peacefully, over tens of thousands of years. Humans had none of that luxury. They lived in a crucible that turned them into the most adaptable, aggressive, and successful predator their planet ever produced." The Korvax turned to Ambassador Grant. "You are apex predators. You climbed to the top of your world's food chain by being better at survival than anything else, and we invited you into the galaxy without understanding what that means. The Vrekath learned this lesson the hard way. They thought humans were prey. They were catastrophically wrong." Neil felt a chill run down his spine. The Korvax had just described humanity in terms that were both complimentary and terrifying. They were right, of course. Humans were survivors, but hearing it stated so bluntly made him wonder what they'd unleashed. "The question before this council," the Korvax said, "is whether we try to stop humanity's campaign or accept their demand for justice. I propose we do neither. I propose we allow this situation to conclude naturally, then negotiate a new relationship with Earth, one based on respect rather than condescension." The council debated for hours. Eventually, they reached a decision. They would not intervene. Humanity's war with the Vrekath would be allowed to conclude without outside interference. It was essentially an admission that the Council was afraid to fight Earth. In orbit around Vrekath Prime, the waiting finally ended. The Vrekath government broadcast an official surrender. They accepted all human terms, complete disarmament, reparations to survivors of the Horizon's dream, and recognition of human sovereignty over disputed territories. Commander Foster received the transmission and forwarded it to Fleet Command. Admiral Sullivan approved the terms and ordered the fleet to stand down from combat operations. The war was over, but the cost was becoming clear. Final casualty reports showed 38,000 Vrekath military personnel killed, 847 human military personnel dead, thousands wounded on both sides. The psychological trauma would last for generations. Ben Hayes sat in his quarters aboard the Retribution, looking at a picture of his sister Jenny. He'd avenged her death. The Vrekath who killed her were dead or defeated, but the victory felt hollow. Jenny wouldn't have wanted this. She was a teacher, someone who believed in peaceful coexistence and understanding between species. He'd turned her death into justification for massive violence. Was that honoring her memory or betraying it? Captain Greg Palmer walked through the corridors of his ship, seeing his Marines celebrating the victory. They were good people, good soldiers. But he'd watched them become harder during the campaign. More ruthless, more willing to ignore pleas for mercy. War changed people, and not always for the better. Lieutenant Amy Brooks submitted a report to Commander Foster about the communications she'd intercepted during the final battle. Vrekath families trying to reach loved ones on military ships, civilians panicking as... 6 months after the Vrekath surrender, Admiral Kate Sullivan stood before the Galactic Council. She wore her dress uniform, medals earned over 4 decades of service gleaming on her chest. But she wasn't here to accept congratulations. She was here to present humanity's terms for the new galactic order. The council chamber fell silent as Kate began to speak. Representatives from 17 species watched, many with barely concealed resentment. Others looked at her with fear. All of them knew that Earth held the military advantage now, and Kate was about to tell them what that meant. The Vrikath attacked humanity because they believed we were weak, Kate said, her voice carrying through the vast chamber. The Galactic Council watched our people die and offered sympathy instead of justice. You created a system where strength is the only currency that matters. Congratulations. Humanity is now very wealthy. Ambassador Neil Grant stood beside Kate, uncomfortable with her aggressive tone but understanding the necessity. The Council needed to understand that everything had changed. Humanity has 3 demands, Kate continued. First, permanent seats on the Council Security Committee with full veto authority over military actions. Second, the right to station human military observers throughout Council space to monitor for threats to civilian populations. Third, the Vrikath will remain under human supervision during their reconstruction. These terms are not negotiable. The Council erupted. Representatives shouted over each other. How dare Earth make demands? Who did humanity think they were? This was imperialism, not justice. Kate waited for the noise to die down. When it didn't, she simply raised her voice. You have 48 hours to accept these terms. If you refuse, humanity will enforce them. We have 50 more warships in orbit around Earth. We can have them here in a week. Your choice. The Korvax representative called for order. When the chamber finally quieted, the ancient alien spoke carefully. Admiral Sullivan, your demands amount to making humanity the galaxy's police force. What gives you that right? Necessity, Kate replied. You've had 10,000 years to create a just galaxy. Instead, you created one where species like the Vrikath hunt weaker civilizations for sport, while the Council does nothing. That ends now. Either you accept human oversight or we'll establish it ourselves. Either way, the status quo is over. Neil leaned close to Kate. You're pushing them too hard. They might fight. Let them, Kate whispered back. We'll win, and then there won't be any debate. The Council went into private session. Kate and Neil waited outside, watching the human Marines who'd accompanied them. These soldiers stood at attention, their presence a reminder of the military force backing humanity's demands. After 4 hours, the Council emerged with their decision. The Korvax representative delivered the verdict. We accept humanity's terms with one condition. Earth must agree to use its military power only for defensive purposes and protection of civilian populations. You cannot become conquerors, Kate nodded. Agreed, humanity doesn't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to make sure no one else gets massacred while the Council watches. The agreement was formalized. Humanity gained unprecedented power within the Galactic Council. Earth's military observers would be stationed at key locations throughout known space. The Vrikath would rebuild under human supervision, and everyone understood that the galaxy's balance of power had fundamentally shifted. Captain Greg Palmer found himself assigned to occupation duty on Vrikath Prime. His Marines were responsible for maintaining order in the capital city while the Vrikath government reorganized. It was strange work for soldiers who'd spent months destroying things to now protect them. Greg walked through the streets of the Vrikath capital, seeing civilians going about their daily lives. They gave his Marines a wide berth, fear obvious in their body language. Children stared at the humans with wide eyes, having been told stories about the terrifying warriors who'd defeated their military so completely. A Vrikath civilian approached Greg cautiously. The alien was elderly, scales faded with age. Through a translator, the Vrikath spoke. Why did you stop? Your fleet could have destroyed our world. Why show mercy after we showed you none? Greg considered the question carefully. Because we're not like you were. We don't kill civilians. We don't attack the helpless. We fight to protect our people and stop threats. Once you stopped being a threat, there was no reason to keep killing. The elderly Vrikath studied him for a long moment. You are strange predators. Fierce in battle, but restrained in victory. I do not understand humans, but perhaps that is why you will succeed where we failed. The conversation stayed with Greg. He realized that humanity's restraint was as important as their military power. They'd proven they could destroy their enemies. Now they needed to prove they could build something better. Dr. Lisa Chen arrived on Vrikath Prime 2 months into the occupation. She'd been asked to help establish medical facilities and train Vrikath doctors in treating injuries from the war. It was uncomfortable work helping people she'd helped hurt, but it felt like the right thing to do. She worked alongside Vrikath medical personnel, learning about their physiology in a clinical setting rather than a military context. The Vrekath doctors were initially hostile, but gradually warmed to her when they saw she genuinely wanted to help. One Vrekath surgeon asked her why she'd come. "You helped your military kill thousands of my people. Now you want to heal us?" "I don't understand your species," Lisa's answer was honest. "Neither do I sometimes. We're very good at violence when we need to be, but we're also capable of compassion. Maybe that's what makes us human. We can do terrible things when threatened, but we try to do better when the threat is gone." The surgeons seemed to understand that, or at least accept it. They worked together to save a Vrekath soldier who'd been wounded in one of the final battles. When the patient stabilized, Lisa felt a small measure of peace. She couldn't undo the damage she'd helped cause, but she could work toward healing. Commander Ryan Foster was promoted to admiral and given command of the new Terran Defense Fleet. Humanity's military expanded rapidly, building on the successes and lessons from the Vrekath campaign. Ryan oversaw the construction of new warships and the training of new crews, but he also established strict rules of engagement. Human forces would not attack civilians. They would accept surrenders. They would show mercy when possible. Ryan was determined that humanity's military power would be tempered by humanity's better instincts. Lieutenant Amy Brooks joined Ryan's staff, handling communications for the fleet. She appreciated the new emphasis on restraint, feeling it represented what humanity should be, not just effective warriors but ethical ones. Lieutenant Commander Ben Hayes took a different path. He requested reassignment to intelligence work, analyzing potential threats to human colonies. The guilt of what he'd done during the war never left him. His sister Jenny had believed in peaceful coexistence. He'd turned her death into justification for massive violence. Ben threw himself into his work, determined to prevent future conflicts rather than win them. He monitored council communications, watched for signs of species becoming aggressive toward others, and provided early warnings that allowed diplomatic solutions. It was his way of honoring Jenny's memory. She'd wanted to build bridges between species. He would protect those bridges from burning. President Carter served out his term and then retired. His legacy was complex. He'd led humanity through first contact, navigated a brutal war, and established Earth as a major galactic power, but the cost haunted him. In his retirement speech, he spoke honestly about the burden of leadership. "I gave the order that started the war," Carter said. "I told Admiral Sullivan to show no mercy, and our military carried out those orders with devastating efficiency. We won, we proved humanity's strength, but I wonder every day if there was another way, if I made the right choice or if my anger clouded my judgment." He looked directly into the camera. "To the families who lost loved ones in the war, both human and Vrekath, I offer my deepest sympathies. Your losses were not in vain, but neither were they easily justified. We live in a complicated galaxy. Sometimes there are no good choices, only terrible ones and slightly less terrible ones. I hope I chose wisely. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to believe I did." 5 years after the war, humanity dedicated the Horizon Memorial Station, built at the exact coordinates where the Horizon's dream was attacked. It served as both a memorial to the fallen and a reminder of what happened when humanity was pushed too far. The dedication ceremony drew representatives from every council species. Even the Vrekath sent a delegation, though they came with obvious trepidation. The station itself was beautiful, a gleaming structure in space with memorial walls listing every name of those who died. Admiral Kate Sullivan, now retired, spoke at the ceremony. "This station stands where 5,000 humans died. They were colonists, families, dreamers who wanted to build something new among the stars. They were killed to prove humanity was weak. Instead, their deaths proved humanity's strength." She gestured to the memorial walls. "But strength alone isn't enough. We learned that during the war. We learned that being able to destroy doesn't make us better. What makes us better is choosing when to fight and when.